Here we go. Here we are. What's up, y'all? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com. Nothing feels more natural than saying, "Hey, this is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com." I don't do it
It's
often
you.
enough these days, but it feels
It's
good.
you, man.
It feels like I'm home.
That's it. Welcome home.
And today, speaking about being home, we got a friend who has been on the show a few times, Mr. Jason Alexander, also known as Fogbreaker Studios. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I have a fan on me. It's humid and I'm okay.
It's warm. Yeah, it's definitely warm up here today. Um, I'm
Yeah,
happy to
probably
be
warm for
inside with the
you.
air conditioner going. I kind of feel like a weenie complaining about 84 degrees and 75 degrees at night, but no, it's hot enough. I've been up here
Yeah,
long enough to complain about it.
yeah. I mean, I like the heat, so it doesn't bother me too much, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm over it. I'm over it.
Yeah.
Last time I went to North Carolina, I went in May. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning when I landed, and it was like 85 degrees. And I'm like, this is why. This is why I'm not here anymore.
Wow.
This is exactly why. When I was 11, I knew Maine was it. Like I
Wow.
knew it was like get me somewhere where it's cool, and
That's
it's Maine. It
it's
is.
so interesting. I have this conversation so many times because everybody's different, and some people like cold, some people like hot and stuff. And what one of my drivers at the place I work at, he shared some very important wisdom with me at one point about liking the heat, and that is, with heat, the thing that's cool about the heat is you don't have to scrape it off your car in the morning. You don't have to shovel it
Yes.
when, you don't have to plow it. It's pretty cool that way.
Yep. But you
So
can only take so many layers off before you
that's
get
what
arrested.
everybody always says.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
you kind of got me on that one, but but you
Yeah,
know
man.
what? I'll tell you, man. It's funny, and this is how, being home here in my Marsh Makes Comics world. I just I can just transition so seamlessly. I'm so used to it. So I mean, something that's interesting is when you have preferences of what you like or don't like. I think that kind of informs your voice as a comic creator, don't you
A
think?
1,000%. 1,000%. You have a clear cut idea of who your villains are gonna be. You know what your heroes are gonna do. You know what
Yeah,
the struggles are. Like it's it's a
totally.
key factor in beginning at least, but it's
I mean,
definitely helped.
you're saying like you knew since you were younger that you wanted to be up in Maine. Like there's at least one very inspiring creator who's found a lot of inspiration in Maine. Mr. Stephen King, and
I was gonna say,
you
who
know,
else could you be talking to? Who else is from Maine other than me? No, I'm joking.
but I mean, like, if you've read his books or anything, not only is he has he lived in Maine his whole life, but most of his books take place in Maine, and involve the world of that whole world.
Yeah, being growing up where I grew up in North Carolina, it's nothing like here. Nothing at all. Like I feel like where I've spent my time in Maine minus Portland is usually about 8 to 10 years behind. It seems like as far as like what's current. But I read Stephen King through high school, sneakily. But a lot of that stuff and like watching Stand By Me and even watching like the old it when that came on ABC when I was a
Yeah.
kid. Once you get up here and once you get out of Portland, you start to say, "Oh, this is why Stephen King wrote A, B, and C the way he did. This is what he saw, because it may not be that corner, but that corner exists in a lot of different areas up here. So it just lended another like layer to my favorite, creator, or one of my favorite creators. Nope, just one clown Frank. Just one. He keeps everybody else away.
Yeah, just one clown, but one clown is enough.
It's plenty. Trust me.
There's one clown that has devastated the imaginations of every child for many years.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about you, Marshall? Like what does it look like? Like what did finding your voice in comics look like? Because I know what mine like I've said what mine looks like 1,000 times and I'll say it again, but like
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I just this is a very interesting topic. Like this is a creator's topic for sure.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and anybody in the chat, you guys are all our friends. We'd be happy to hear your thoughts and questions on the subject as well, because I think this is, like he said, an interesting subject.
There's a lot
But
of people in the chat. What's going on, y'all?
I know what's up.
Ronnie, Frank, Itchy.
Yeah,
Van, what's going on, man? Seagull Dreams, what's up? I haven't seen you forever.
it's all our long lost friends.
That's it,
man. So yeah, I mean, as far as like my voice, like that's the problem. That's kind of why I wanted to do this video, because I'm like, I was thinking about it, and we already had some conversation a little bit, but I'm like, man, like, all right, so I was on like the dating apps and stuff for a little while.
Yeah.
And there was this one girl that I talked to and stuff, and I told her, I remember telling her, like, she, like, I was like, oh, I make comics and stuff, and she's like, well, what kind of comics do you make? I'm like, oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, I've literally made like no two comics the same. So
right.
I'm like, I guess I'm kind of trying to find my voice, with comics. And then ever since I said that, and then one time because we're still friends now, not going out or anything, we're just friends. But like one time she asked me, she's like, so what do you think? She asked me again, like, you're trying to find your voice in comics, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what it is. And that's the problem. Like, this is the big problem, is like, if any of you have watched my journey at all through the comic stuff, and all my working artist vlogs, all my making 100 days of making comics things and all that stuff, if you've even watched a fraction of that, because I doubt anybody's watched all 800 or so videos, if you've watched even a fraction of that, it's like, I'm always like trying to figure out what the hell I want to do. Like, and like, I'm just like, I know that I enjoyed, 90s comics, Image Comics. I always come back to that. This is like what excited me and what made me want to become a comic creator. But the problem with that is those comic creators, like, their voice was, how do I make the coolest looking thing, like the most badass thing? Like, it wasn't like, anything like super deep story wise and stuff. So, I mean, Spawn was about as deep as you get, and that was pretty cool. I thought it was interesting, but it
all lended to sellability, and I'm not knocking it, because I loved reading about Image. That was like my highlight of Wizard, my Wizard magazine time. But no, it was eye catching, and that's just not me personally. I think that I have as much of a claim to stake as anybody, but I want to grab them. I want to grab them, like, not in a creepy way, but I just want people to stick around beyond what the cover looks like. The cover is important, the visuals are important, but
it only goes so far, right? And
it's like those
the image guys have had, stability. I mean, especially Todd McFarlane and Spawn and stuff. But that's in like Savage Dragon, Eric Larson, like, but that's almost out of like sheer willpower, just to continue to like draw cool things and like, just, I don't know, just keep the property going. And I think it's just they rode a really good wave, and they're still riding it, and I think that's awesome. You know, but for me, I feel like as awesome and exciting as it is to be like, I just want to make a cool comic,
Where what the
it's not motivating enough, you know. It's
Yep.
like I need more than that. And so now, since I've, you know, made a few comics here and there, like I'm like, I don't know, like I have a lot of ideas, but a lot of them don't like continue to finish unless there's a deadline. Like,
Right.
and I do see other creators who are very like, they have a vision, you know, they have a voice, they have something they're trying to get out. And I'm like, and I've had that with certain things, but not as much with comics for some reason. You know, it's really been kind of skin deep a lot of times. And I'm like, I want to have something to say, you know, but for some reason that voice, something hasn't caused me to have that voice. And I feel like that's what hurts my motivation, you know, to kind of have like this, I almost feel like a flagship title or something, or
Sure.
something that anchors me to, you know, as a creator in comics. And I don't know, it's been I'm starting to realize with a little bit of separation from actively making comics, I'm starting to realize maybe, you know, maybe that's the problem. Maybe I don't know what my voice is. Because even with Glyph, like Glyph has been like what I thought was going to be like my kind of flagship title, but I've like written and rewritten that story so many times. I'm like, I have no clue who Glyph is, you know?
Sure.
So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And that's one reason why I'm like, you know, you and I were just chatting on text and stuff. And I'm like, man, if there's anybody who has a voice in comics, I feel like, you know, you do, you know, some of my other friends do too. I think of, you know, Lucifer Storm, also known as
Yeah.
Flay Storm. He definitely has a voice, you know, in
Yep.
comics, I feel like. You know, and there's other people too. So I don't know, like what drives you to be like, I just need to tell some more stories, like, and I kind of know what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So mine. So in the grand scope of things, I guess I don't really know, like in a structure, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know what I'm doing, right? Like,
Right.
it started out with my, my XJW stuff. Like, I knew that that was a story I had to tell, but I didn't really know, like, I didn't know genres. I didn't know where that fit, so I just started writing because I knew it. I knew the story that I wanted to tell. But working with Ronnie, like, and learning horror, I started to say, what I do is horror. I just didn't. I had all the puzzle pieces. I just didn't know what it looked like completed. And now it's like, as I'm learning horror, I just want to. I want to see where that goes. And so it's like, once I picked a genre, it's like, okay, there's a lot of things I can do in this sandbox. Um, but it's very the marketability part, the here's my idea that I'm going to present to the world. That's been the challenge, because I have to make sure I have to sell it to myself first. And with ransom notes, like, that's an easy sell to me, but not everybody can tackle or wants to tackle the specifics of growing up XJW. But I can amplify the elements of the story now. You know what I mean? So it's like, my voice is telling these true unsettling stories, whether they be about Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever they're about. Even if I'm doing superheroes, the real problem is always going to be rooted in something that's relatable to whoever picks it up. And because I've struggled, I've experienced a lot of struggle. I know what hardships look like. Maybe not every single one, but I know how to connect to somebody with the feeling that you get when you go through what you're going through. So once you can isolate that, so anyway, not to ramble, that's my voice. My voice is to relate to folks' dark sides. And if you know me, I'm not I'm not a druid. You know what I mean? Like I'm happy most of the time, but I know how to connect with it, with that darkness that people have. And so once I can do that, then I can scare you, or then I can show you what I see. And so that's been the most empowering part of finding my voice. I know that the reception will happen later, as long as I'm, you know, bellying up to the bar and doing what I'm supposed to do. So I'm I love the beginning of stories, and I get a high off that. Hey, you got an idea. Now let's do it. And then it kind of just fizzles away. And then if you don't have a story that you believe in, it doesn't matter who's into it. It just doesn't, because you're not going to finish it, because you don't know. You don't know your story. So once you know your story, I know my story, so I can finish any story now. And I think that's the biggest part that was my biggest part of finding my voice was, yeah, your voice is dark, but that doesn't mean that the bad guy has to win or everybody has to die, because that's not the way it is in real life, and it's not sunshine and rainbows every day. But that doesn't mean you can't chuckle and still say, "Damn, this was rough," but you usually make it through. Like, it doesn't have to be that ultimate final ending because the story is dark. So you gotta find it and write it, and it doesn't look like everybody else's, but if it's yours, you're going to connect to somebody.
So I think there's a lot you said in there, and I think that you know what I feel like when I think of you and what you do is I feel like your stories are heavily influenced by your life and what you've gone through, and you're saying the dark stuff, and it's funny. It is funny because when I think of you and your personality, it's more like bright, and like when I think of you, I think of, oh, that's a guy I can go to and be encouraged. Like he's a nice guy. He's cool. Like, and he's fun and he's relatable and he's not like surface level either at the same time, you know? And so, but you've gone through some things that are at the very least emotionally dark. At the very most, there's more to it.
Right.
And, you know, I feel like that touches everything you do with your stories.
It has to.
Even though you're
Like,
not talking specifically about that in every story.
yeah, it has to. You know, it's like a tree trunk and a tree leaf. Like, you're not going to grow an apple on an oak tree. You're going to have oak leaves. You're going to have acorns. No matter if that tree is this big or when it's 728 feet tall, it's going to produce the same thing. You're going to know what type of tree it came off of. And if it's not, then it's not authentic. And if it's not authentic, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, an apple tree never grows a peach, you know.
No. Not my world, you know, but
that's interesting. That's, and that's an interesting thing though. It's like, so I could make like 100 comics act and be like, I don't know how, I have no clue what my voice is, but it doesn't matter because the voice is going to happen, because whatever tree I am is going to bear whatever fruit.
That's it.
You
make
I can't help
a
but bear whatever
bat.
fruit.
Exactly. Make a baseball bat, a bonfire, an apple pie. Like, these are the things that you can do with your tree. You can't build an aluminum car from your tree. No matter how hard you try, you can't. And you're wasting time doing it. So like you gotta pick it and listen to it. Because your voice is your voice. Like you can only control it. You can only dictate it so much because it goes back to that whole authenticity thing, you know. You have to be who you are. And I've learned who I am through this. I didn't think of myself as a horror writer. I barely even looked at it. And I wish that I shouldn't say I wish that it wasn't, because I love it. But I wish it wasn't something that wasn't so in the groove, like its own, like horror is own trend right now. So there's a lot of people doing really, really good horror. And so, you know, I like being I shouldn't say standout, but I like being the misfit. And there's comfort for me in being a misfit. So like showing up to the party and like wanting to do horror, especially like, you know, I work with Ronnie every week and Ronnie does horror. Ronnie does good horror. So it's my voice. I can't do much about that other than make my voice the best my voice that it can be. And then my horror won't be like anybody else's, even still, you know?
Yeah, there's so many good things in what you just said. Like, and the thing is, you know, and everybody, if you want to check out the more stories from Jason Fogbreaker Studios here, you know, there's a link down below, only one link in the description, and it's for mini
comic bundles. Yes.
So, and that is drawn by Aaron Guzman, and it's amazingly drawn by him. And,
yeah, Aaron is nuts. I got the Drifter right here.
There you go. So, you know, it's and I have his art on my wall because he did Janaconda with me, and I love it, and I still love it, and his art is amazing, and you know his visual storytelling is great. Like it's really good. It's not, you know, just hack job anything. It's really thoughtful, good storytelling.
High level. Aaron takes it very seriously. It's dope shit. It really, really is.
And so the thing is, though, is again, like I said, the link is in the description. But if you want to check out what Jason's talking about, because the reason why I know this is like a little promo, little thing, but at the same time, you know, the reason why I bring that up is because there's multiple stories in this mini comics bundle thing, and every story is not a horror story, you know. I don't think your voice is a genre, personally. Like,
no,
I think
for sure.
I think I mean specifically you, but anybody really. But I feel like
totally
your voice transcends a genre. And again, bringing it back to Stephen King, and it's easy to do that with, you know, you're from Maine and all that. But like Stephen King always kind of transcended genre, even though he was known as a horror writer. Like, sometimes you have a horror story and you're like, where's the horror here? It's just some kind of supernatural thriller, or there's people walking around looking for towers. Like, I don't know what's going on here. But you can hear his voice in everything that he writes easily.
No, it's so Stephen King is a very distinct writer. Like, you know, reading The Shining and reading Misery, two entirely different stories, you know, that kind of turn away from each other. Wow, what's going on, Bear? Wow, I hadn't seen that face in a while. How you doing, man? But Stephen King's stamp exists in his stories, you know. And even Cujo is an underrated book. Like, that was one of the ones that I read first, because it wasn't super horror, so it was easy to get in and out of the house.
And even, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that Shawshank Redemption is Stephen King. And if you've ever read that, it's a short story. He has books that are just short stories.
Yep.
And it's a short story. And what it is, all it is Red, the character Red, are writing. I think he's writing the letter or something. It's a letter, like written, and you read that. And I read it and I'm like, how is this what one of my favorite movies is? Because the two don't seem like the same thing.
Right. Right.
But the
Right.
movie is like amazing, and the story is cool, but like this was the inspiration. But I still feel like Stephen King's voice is even in the movie,
Yep.
somehow, some way. But that being said, like, I think one thing you said was like I forget how you said it, but you were like, you kind of write your stuff and then like you pay attention to it. And I
Yep.
think that's interesting because your voice, once you get it out a little bit, it can inform your voice. Like it can help you to say, okay, I'm doing this because of this and that because of that, or I see these trends. And so, you almost see like your strengths and your weaknesses, and like, okay, this is the thing that I do well. Let me focus on making
Yep.
that the best it can be, or
Right. Yeah.
something like that. Is that kind of how you think of it, or?
Absolutely. Yep. Believe it or not, I get long winded sometimes. And like, it's discouraging as a writer sometimes to know what you're going to have to do to get to where you want to get to sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, they really have to be at this diner for this long. And so now my challenge is I know that nobody else really cares about that. So I'm having to find new ways of like talking myself through the diner, hitting the key points, and then getting to the whatever is under the car or what was in the food or whatever it is, you kind of have to learn that even as a writer, not everybody wants to hear what you have to say all the time. They want to hear they want to hear what you think. They don't really want to hear what you have to say. And I like to hear what I think as well. And that's kind of the power of learning how to read what you write. Something, to be honest, I hated doing. I hated proofreading. I hated drafts. I try to just say, you know what, I'm just going to try to be as concise as I can as I go through it, and this will be finished. But is that's not the best. That's a thought. But like when you polish that thought, like, yeah, go get the marble. But now you got to put a face on it. Now you got to put some arms on the marble. Yes, the marble is the marble, but what do you do with it? And that's kind of the next step in. I guess that's my voice changing. Like that's my creative puberty. I guess is like the polish work. And as a writer, you don't think about it, or I don't think about it a lot. I just like to write, and then I shore it up. But it can always be polished. And if you think it's good, what would make it better? Like how do you get what's your microphone level like? What's your microphone level like on your voice? Like, turn it up a little bit. They can hear you, but what do you sound like? Is there a lot of reverb? Is there too much bass? Are you crystal clear? Are you standing too close to the microphone? All these things, like they all count. And so
yeah, they do. They totally do. And it's interesting. There's a couple things I want to bring up from what you're saying there. Is one thing is interesting is like all right, so I'm a huge fan of the Beatles.
yeah, me too.
And I've been digging in a little bit more since I've been playing around with this guy right here. So I'm like, okay, let me get into some of my favorite songwriting and stuff like that. So one thing that really amazed me that I didn't know till I dug in more was, Paul McCartney's really, he's like the center of the Beatles when it really comes down to it. He's the one who really knows music the most, and
Yep.
you know, and he was a multi instrumentalist, and everybody else did amazing things. And the real actual core is the combination of Paul McCartney and John Lennon. They all work together in a really awesome way, but especially those two as songwriters, they are master songwriters together. For some reason, it's like Stanley, Jack Kirby, Stanley Ditko, you
That's the
know,
duo, right?
John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Like, I don't care what you say. Like, there was some magic that happened when some of these people came together.
Yep.
Um, and uh, the thing is that's interesting is Paul McCartney by himself and John Lennon by himself. They have very different voices, and same thing with George and Ringo as well.
Yep.
They all have very distinct different voices by themselves, and when they come together, they have a distinct different voice as well. That's separate
Right.
from all four of them.
Well, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. The
so that's really interesting. And right now you're working with Aaron, and it's like I wonder if your voice is different with Aaron than it is with, say, if you and I did a project, or if you did it by yourself, or you know what I
one,
mean.
how can it be? How can it be? Especially like with as long as me and Aaron have gone, we I know what Aaron is looking for in a script. I know what Aaron's execution is going to look like when I write certain things. So I think that we both start to play towards that. And that's not our individual identities, but it's throwing an alley oop in a basketball game. You don't throw it for you to catch it, but you might throw a really pretty pass for somebody to like do a spectacular dunk that you can't do either. But together, that's the play, right? Like my writing be like for myself is entirely different. And I'm curious to see what it looks like for as many other people as who I would ever get to write for. But yeah. See, like even on the Beatles, you and I'm a George Harrison guy. I enjoy that
He made some of the best
metaphysical.
Beatles songs.
Yeah,
He
and
wrote
it's
some of the
like
best ones.
his lyrics are always, for me, his lyrics were always the thoughtful lyric. His lyrics were more like the arm around your shoulder, like you know, uh, John and Paul wrote monsters. Like they wrote hits, but they were hits because they were good songs. They wasn't hits because they threw them in a marketing machine and knew what to spit out. But
Yeah.
George's vibe was just always different to me. And if I get emotional listening to the Beatles, it's usually a George Harrison song that he wrote, or just listening to George Harrison, who also, to go to your point, every solo Beatles album sounds nothing like a Beatles album. They
Yeah.
all changed. They all evolved. They all, had their quote unquote weird phases. But it was because they knew what their voice was. It didn't matter who heard what. They were using their voice. And
Yeah.
that's that's the that's the
Yeah.
the right amount of mayonnaise on the sandwich.
Totally. And John Lennon by himself, Paul McCartney by himself, George Harrison by themselves, Ringo Starr. You know, would they have had a career? Like, how far would their career have gone if they just were solo? Originally. You
They would
know,
have been good. Most of them, like I think all four of them would have been good, but they would not have been icons.
we might not know who they are. It's
No.
possible.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I would say the strongest out of the four, just overall, would be Paul McCartney. He just has more musicality knowledge and stuff. And when I
He can
listen
still
to
make a
like,
hit now.
when I listen to when I listen to Wings, or if I listen to him by himself, he's the one who sounds the most like the Beatles. You know, I feel like.
Right.
Um,
Wings would have existed fine without any history or knowledge of the Beatles. Those songs still would have
but
stood alone.
still, even after the Beatles, there's plenty of people who don't even know who Wings is. You know, like
Unfortunately.
so. But you know, that being said, you know, it's just really interesting because also another thing with John Lennon and Paul McCartney working together is John Lennon would or Paul McCartney would like come up with like a song or an idea, and John Lennon would like put like a realistic line in there, or almost like a depressing line. So
Yep.
like, you know, Paul McCartney would be like, you know, the sun is shining, everything's happy, and John Lennon would be like, but we're gonna die tomorrow. Like I don't know, like there was,
Right.
I don't know the exact words, but there's like things like that where he would do that. And then you can hear when they're by themselves, John Lennon's stuff is more dramatic and more political and more like a
Yeah.
lot of other things. And then like you said, George Harrison, like very thoughtful. Like I love that. That's a great way to describe him. More meditative. You know, he's just like, yeah, he's just more, yeah, just a different voice, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I don't want to talk about the Beatles all night, but but like, you know,
We
it is
could.
an interesting way to think about it, you know, because there it's just an obvious example, you know what I mean?
It's
Um,
all storytelling.
it
We
is,
love we love Beatles stories. You know,
yeah,
where does Helter Skelter fit in with I Want to Hold Your Hand? They're both good
right,
stories.
yeah,
You know.
totally. And they're from people at, you know, Helter Skelter came out at a different time from people who had experienced a whole lot more than the people who wrote, you know, I Want to Hold Your Hand, you know,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
which
You
is
know, it's
interesting, even though they're the same people.
they're the same people. You know, but I remember. I can't remember who was telling me this, but somebody was saying that they read a book that when the Beatles did Abbey Road, there was another band. I want to say Pink Floyd was like recording in the same building, and they both started eavesdropping on each other, like listening to their sound. And you know, Abbey Road sounds very different than a lot of the stuff that was with the Beatles before it, and nothing sounds like Pink Floyd. You know, so just game recognizing game and figuring it like how do I incorporate your tools in my voice. And
Mm. And I love that you said like tools, because again with the transitions and stuff, another thing you said earlier was you were talking about like, you know, as you're like, you kind of hear your own voice, you're starting to see kind of what the arms and the legs are and this structure and this and that, and
yeah,
like, and I'm like thinking, okay, the tools, and then also the shape and the structure, and I'm thinking, okay, comics, like you particularly are more of, I feel like more of a prose writer. You're more of a you know, a pantser, I think, than a structure, you know, writer. And you know, at the same time, you have mostly written comics from what I understand,
yep,
or you are mostly, I think, interested in writing comics, even though you have other things you I think probably want to do. Um, how much does the craft of comics come into play with you know, influencing what your voice is?
I've come to enjoy the the way that you can set a scene in comics. Versus having to like set it with a lot of adjectives, you can set exactly the scene because it's all important. and don't get me wrong, and I know exactly what I mean. I hope it doesn't sound bad. I could really care less about the building unless the building is like actively like crushing the characters inside of it. I just I need framework to get to my characters. And I need, because that's where the story builds. You know what I mean? Unless there's a reason for you to be in the building, I have to like describe the building to a T so I can wrap my brain around where these characters are. Maybe not necessarily like a sweeping location, but like give me the room and like let's get to the characters. And that's what I love about comics is I can like lay out I can set my screen, I can set my camera, write down this is what I see, and now here's what's going on. With prose writing, like you have to be descriptive. You have to like build the smells. You have to build the sounds that come out of the floor. And that with somebody like me who gets long-winded, like that can dominate a story. I don't really have to worry about that as much with comics because it's here's my setting line. I know where everybody is. Now I can get to my characters because that's what I love. I love writing characters, even though I hate naming them.
Maybe we should collaborate because I do like naming.
Oh, do you? Awesome. Hey, that works for me, man.
That's funny.
But yeah, that's what I love the most about script writing for comics is you can go long, but you can go long on you can isolate what you go long on a little bit quicker than with prose writing.
Yeah. And that's what Aaron probably hates about you writing comics.
He's like, no. Like let's get this nailed down a little bit more. But I see exactly what I'm saying, but he's not me,
Yeah, totally. Man, I'm trying to think. So, like, I think, I guess you mentioned character. So, like, I guess to me, character is where it's at. That's such a huge part of what comics or what stories are. And I feel like if there's anywhere where you can express your voice, character is kind of the place. The main that's like your microphone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the whole thing is the microphone because you think of like some people's descriptions are so beautiful, like especially in like prose writing and stuff. And as an illustrator, like, if Rob Liefeld draws like a background scene in a comic versus Bernie Wrightson, like
yeah,
if I read a Bernie Wrightson comic, I feel like I'm in the swamp, whereas if I read like a Rob Liefeld comic, I don't know where the hell I am. Somewhere floating. There's a spaceship. I think I don't know. Like
my feet are a little, Now, I love Rob Liefeld, so I'm not crapping
So
on
do
too
I.
much. But like, no, I totally get what you mean.
But as far as like character though, like so, and that's another thing. It's like, Alien, like the environment was part of the character,
Yeah, absolutely.
But so there are those exceptions to the rule, but when it comes down to it, like character is that's the microphone, that's and it's like you have to be you have to be like savvy, you have to be artistic with that microphone. You can't just be like okay, this is my microphone, I'm about to speak through it, like mic drop.
Exactly.
Like you do that and you'll lose people. Like you have to like you got to use it with some finesse, you
I
know.
was gonna say there's subtlety into making them listen. Because, like I said, everybody doesn't want to read about Jehovah's Witnesses all the time. I'm growing to the point where I don't even want to write about Jehovah's Witnesses all the time. But everybody's been taken advantage of, and everybody has felt like they've been in a situation that they didn't belong in. So, at what point do you raise that up and like mute some of the causes, so to speak? Um, because, like I said, not everybody has experienced what I've experienced, but they felt how I felt. That's something that you and I have talked about in having very different experiences. We kind of get each other. You know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I can see how you feel in situations A, B, and C because I had situation X, Y, Z, but it made me feel a similar way. But now you and I can tell that story without our business. Nobody wants to see me in every comic book I write. I don't
Right.
want to be in every comic book I write, but my voice can. Not every, George Lucas doesn't look like Luke Skywalker, but he also doesn't look like Darth Vader or Yoda or Obi-Wan. But that's his voice, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think I think one thing that is almost like an advantage if you use it properly in storytelling, and unless you write like a two character one character story, is and honestly that would be a challenge for a writer, I feel like, is you have multiple characters. So the thing about the thing about being human is, and this is something I wish everybody would freaking get through their skull, is is you know you are not like the summation of what everybody thinks of who you voted for, or you are not, because you're this or because you did this doesn't mean you're everything that everybody thinks about when they think of somebody who does that.
Right.
You are a human, and you probably have all kinds of thoughts that are even fighting each other sometimes. You have all kinds of emotions that go against your thoughts, or that sometimes align and sometimes go this way, sometimes go that way. Like we are not just simple like I do this, therefore I am all these things. Like
Right.
so, you know, the thing that's cool about writing a story is there's multiple characters. You can um, express multiple things,
Sure.
even
Absolutely.
if they are against each other, because I don't know about you, like I say, okay, I'm a Christian conservative, but I don't feel like, you know, I don't agree with everything, that you would think somebody who is that agrees with, and I'm also like, you know, I don't know, like I just feel like I love this, I don't love that so much, and there's various shades of gray, pink, purple, yellow, orange, within that, so it's like there's no this is this is a I mean, writing is such a great chance to express freely and kind of safely, to a certain degree, unless you're like sometimes, and that's the thing, that's why it's so important to have those subtleties and to have some finesse, because if your voice is so strong that it takes the reader out of like they're like, oh, I'm being preached to right now, or oh, this is obviously like this character isn't even this character anymore. There's something else, coming through here. It's like a demon has possessed this character, and the demon is the writer. Like,
Right.
like if you've done that, then you haven't done your job well,
Right.
unfortunately.
We started Gilead City last month in the middies. Nobody would ever know reading that. That is that is a story that is about my upbringing. That's a story about being a Jehovah's Witness. But it's not. Like maybe like hearing me say that, if you go back and read it, you might pick up on it a little bit through the first and second volumes. But that was honestly like a shot in the arm for me kind of wanting to explore what Ransom Notes is supposed to be, because it wasn't very subtle. It was good. I love what it looks like finished, but it wasn't very subtle. You know what I mean? And I can do better. After seeing Midsummer, I'm like, oh, this tells the cult story so much better than just flat out saying it. Loki, I don't know if you watch Loki. Loki touched me so different because it was a story about beliefs and shifting your beliefs and understanding that sometimes what's meant to be is what's meant to be, but that may not be necessarily what you think it is. Um, it was just it was very eye-opening when I watched it, because in the good writing being relatable scope, it was a whole different world to watch something that was a quote unquote a box office smash that affected me so personally. I never would have
Yeah.
expected something on Disney Plus to like really grab me, and like the analyzing of it doesn't match what I saw. Midsummer,
Yeah.
me and Gary and Ronnie talked about Midsummer. That movie it's about being in a cult, but there's so many subtleties that are, it's just a hallmark of good writing. And it's a hallmark of somebody who is confident in their voice. You can be Jerry Seinfeld and decide to make and like you said, any genre, but with his voice, if he sticks true to his voice, it's going to come out okay, because his voice is very pronounced. Stephen King, no matter what he says in his voice, is probably going to hit. You
Yeah.
know, and so that's, like you're right, Marshall. I choose to live in the horror sandbox, but if I go to Metropolis, my voice is still going to be the same there as it
And you,
is here.
and you see, there are some authors that do jump around from genre to genre. Like what natural genre would you say like Grant Morrison is in, but he does superhero comics a lot of times? Like,
Yeah,
like
that's for
he's
sure.
transcends superhero because he's not really. I
Because
don't
he's
feel
Grant
like his
Morrison,
natural
right?
place is that.
Yeah, I mean, even going way back to what was it, Transmetropolitan? Like, where does that fit in anywhere in our world? But that's a badass comic book. Like, it works, and all of Grant Morrison stuff with the X-Men, and then to Batman, he brings it when he comes to your comic. It's not him being molded to your world, but he tells your world through his eyes. So
Yeah. We do have some questions, which is really cool. We got Seagull Dream says, "What do you think is the biggest thing that squashes an artist's voice? What's keeping people from finding their voice?" And I'll let you think about that. I'm going to say what I think real
okay.
quick. is basically, I think, at least for me, I'm not going to project. For me, my thing is, I'm my own worst enemy. I think uh, my own insecurities, my own judgments of myself, and where I should be and what I should be doing. I think that's the thing that squashes my voice. And squashes me from finding my voice because um, if you were actually Seagull Dreams, you were here from the beginning. One of the things, though, for the benefit of everybody else who came in later, that Jason, aka Fogbreaker Studios, said was, um, we were talking about the idea of a tree brings forth certain fruit, and when it comes down to it, an apple tree is not going to produce the fruit of a peach tree. It's not going to make peaches. Um, so you kind of can't help but have your voice. So
Yep.
I've done multiple different stories. They've all been, you know, very random, but somewhere in there is my voice. It's similar to the topic of style. Like, how do you find your style? I don't know. I've had people tell me that they can tell my style when I draw a picture and put it up online. They can tell it's me before they see, you know, what the name is next to it.
That's
And
awesome.
I feel the same way with literally all of my friends. Like, I can tell, you know, I could just scroll through this chat. I know a Salazar Art Nation drawing when I see it. I know Fogbreaker. When I see your art, all these people like Bad Ham Comics, Ariana. Like, when I see your art, I can tell. I think that's, yep. It is that person.
Yep.
Sideburns. I know your art, man. Like, like all these people. Like, you have a voice whether you like it or not, almost. you know
Yeah. Yeah. If you do it long enough, you're going to find your way of doing it. It's just the way it is. I guess the biggest thing that squashes an artist's voice internally for me is imposter syndrome.
yeah.
Because, I do this a lot. Like it's what I do. So I believe that I believe that I'm a comic creator. But sometimes, like, once I sit down and I start to like look at YouTube, or I'm with you guys, and I'm like, man, like, am I doing this or am I just doing it because I'm a fan? But I'm not a fan. And the other thing, externally, I do believe that there's too much division in a field as creative as making comic books. I don't think that, even if you use your comics as your personal platform, I don't think that I don't think that it's wrong, and I don't think that it's necessarily right for it to be liked just because, or disliked just because. If it's a good story, it's going to stand out. And I feel like that we all miss out on so many good stories because everything is so grouped and ruly, like unspoken ruly. I just think it's sad because I think that everybody has the potential to tell a badass story, but they don't really. It's hard to build a confidence at first if you don't. I don't know. Like, I hated being in a cult, and then like being like comics and writing was kind of like this one like bright green blade of grass in this like black and white field, and I held. It was like, oh, finally, I not only can I see color, I can do whatever I want to. But it's like once you feel like that starts to get boxed in, it almost makes you not want to do it. Or if you have to do this before you can do this, like, yo, like sometimes I don't want to worry about selling it. I just want to worry about making it. I want it to be, I just want to make it.
Yeah.
So that I think that that's the hard thing is like we feel like, especially in this like, self-promotion day and age, which is important, don't get me wrong. But I feel like if you want to do one thing, just stick to it. Like if you want to do comics, don't worry about, like come on YouTube. Like I enjoy coming on your channel more than I enjoy like hosting my own channel. Or I like being on Ronnie's channel. When me and him and Gary get to hang out, or me and Ronnie get to hang out, more than I like hosting the channel. Because I want to be a voice for creators. I don't want to be the voice because that's silly, but I want to be a voice of somebody who works a 9 to 5 and is, in their 40s now and is just getting started. And it's all okay. And I'm still going to do all of it. I'm still going to sell a movie. I'm still going to make a comic. I'm still going to write a book. I'm still going to do all of these things. And nobody should have any right to stop that. Nobody should have any right to like put a kink in your hopes. So that's me. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on too long.
No,
I just think that
I love that. I love that, and I'm gonna not only not stop you from saying that, but I'm gonna invite you to say a little bit more because one thing you said to me recently, and I know you said it on another stream as well, but you were talking about joy, something about joy, and I thought that was like a pretty profound thing.
What did I? I'm gonna look back at our chat because I know I
Yeah.
don't want to say it because it made sense when I said it.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is like you were saying, like you it's not, it's like your joy, your happiness, your
I
desire, your
said
passion is not based off of the results. You're not looking at the results and measuring them against
right.
what you're trying to do.
There's success in joy.
There's success
100%.
and joy. Yes.
There's 100% success in joy because I would rather be happy with something than I work a job and I get paid for it. I've done that since I was 15.
Yeah.
What I haven't done is I haven't made a comic book about, not returning a shopping cart to the right place. There's joy in that. Like that's just what counts, man. Like
yeah.
There's the smile. The smile is never the paycheck. The smile is what you do with the paycheck.
Yeah.
Buy a house, get some food, buy a toy, buy a video game.
Yeah.
It's like if you could just get the video game and you could get the house without working.
Yeah.
Hello.
No, this
I'm not
is
going to work tomorrow.
This is something that only 90s hip hop heads will necessarily get, but I'm just saying it.
Yes, Scenario was the best rap song of the 90s. No,
hey, I can't really disagree with that. It was a great song, for sure. But I was having this discussion actually today with some friends, and I was also just thinking about it myself a lot because Nas came out with a new album recently, and it was exciting because he has one song that has EPMD and Eminem on it, and then he has another song that has Lauryn Hill on it. And if anybody knows anything about 90s hip hop, like Lauryn Hill, Fugees was amazing.
Royalty, absolutely.
Lauryn Hill's first album was amazing, and then she kind of just dropped off of the face of the earth. And she's like amazing, and the fact that she's on a song is like with Nas, because she did do a song with Nas before, and just thinking about that got me like excited. So I listened to that, and then I was talking to my friends about like Nas Illmatic. Like this is like this is a pinnacle hip hop, especially if you're a 90s person.
Yeah.
Album. And so I was thinking, like, I told my friends, I'm like, honestly, like, it's hard to say because there's so much stuff that came before it and all that. But to me, Nas Illmatic, if somebody put that in their top 5 or even number 1 hip hop album of all time, I wouldn't judge them because that
No,
is an amazing album. That could be a number 1 or top 5 of all time. And so the reason why I'm saying that is because this album, this is boom bap, this is bringing lyricism up a notch. This is bringing a bunch of amazing producers together. There's so much stuff that made this album happen to be like an amazing album.
yep,
Um, but the thing is this album actually didn't do well when it first came out. Like it did fine, it did decent, but it wasn't like to be as much of a cornerstone album of hip hop as it is. It you would think it would have done better, but like this is the diving board, springboard for Nas's whole career. And if I was Nas and all I ever made was Nas Illmatic, I'd be a happy person.
that's
Like
it. You won. You won. You did it.
like that was it. Like so, this is just saying, you could say the same thing with like Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Fantastic Four. Like, did they make millions off of that? No. But that was the springboard for the Marvel universe. Like
Yeah,
you
like
know, like so
these
you
are
you
gateways.
you create in a place of love, joy, passion, and the thing that might be the most amazing thing you ever create might not be the most lucrative thing you create.
And
But
that's
it's still as important and as awesome. And if you never get to a point where things jump off, it's still worth what it's worth. You know what I mean?
I tell you. So quick Nas story. So Nas was like that was like kind of the beginning point of me like watching like Rap City and Yo MTV Raps, and like to see like these New York rappers in their bomber jackets and it's cold. I remember like that first 40-degree day in North Carolina, and I'd have on my discount Wilson's leather jacket that my mom got because she managed there, and the smoke would come out of my mouth. I'm like, yeah, like this, like now I feel cool, and it's never been like spent any amount of time in New York City, never rapped, never done any of that stuff. But once you can like lock somebody into that, it's relatability. It's like once you lock somebody into that monument, the gateway, it's like the monolith dropping on 2001. The same thing. Nas came, Nas was the gateway for the Biggies, all the Wu-Tang stuff. I mean, I know they were kind of coming up around the same time, but because Nas didn't blow the doors off, he set the doorway up. Then the door came off the hinges. Jack
Oh yeah.
Kirby kind of set the table for Image to bust that doorway down. But it was like, look at how much time there was in between those two things.
Yeah.
The seed and the tree. It's
Yeah.
like it all starts somewhere.
Well, that's it's funny that you said you relate it back to comics because when I couldn't say this to my music friends because they don't know comic geek stuff, but like, but what I was thinking of Nas. I'm like he set the bar with lyricism in a way that paved the way for someone like Eminem to come through. Like, he once he did what he did as easy as it's felt like he did it,
Yep.
so many other people came by after that. And to me, he's almost like the Jim Lee of like hip hop.
Yes.
Because Jim
Yes.
Lee did that. Like once Jim Lee came in with that like detail and like the structure and whatever it was that he did, everybody else copied him. There's a million Jim Lee clones,
Yep.
and he paved the way for a J. Scott Campbell and like a why can't I think of the Batman Spawn guy, Greg Capullo or somebody like that.
Oh man, I
Like
love
all
Greg
these other
Capullo.
amazing artists who came after him. Like there were
Yep.
people before Jim Lee, but there was something about what Jim Lee did that had everybody on his like
Yeah.
bandwagon, you know?
Jim Lee even has influenced the manga style. Like,
Mm.
just like looking at those 90s X-Men comics, like that was before we even knew what was happening in Japan. Like we had our own taste of it, like that is the look of the 90s is Jim Lee, and he's the gateway. If it
Yeah.
wasn't for Jim Lee and it wasn't for the rest of the Image 7, who knows that we don't even, that we even, there's not YouTube videos about how to break into DC and Marvel.
Right.
Now it's like, instead of trying to break into Image, it's here's how you do your own thing
Yeah.
with success.
Yeah, it's
It's
true. And
achievable.
yeah, and I mean there were a lot of people who, so it's interesting because Image wasn't the first ones to talk about creator owned and
Right.
and do all that, but like so there was a lot of people who kind of did the dirty work before them, who like ground up the gravel and like
Right.
dug the trenches, and then they
Yep.
came through and paved the path.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting because you're totally right. Like now we have the internet and we have Indiegogo and Kickstarter and things like that, and YouTube, and people are taking whatever flag there was and running with it.
Yeah.
It's like a relay race, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And we have another question I want to get to, and then this will be the last question of the night. And here, where is it? It's here we go. Our good buddy Frank, who we love and
Frank.
respect, Mr. Frank Salazar, Art Nation, says, when you get discouraged because of something someone said about your work, and this goes also to a former question, what do you do when people discourage you?
I think my answer might be different than yours. Um, I'm like, I get a chip on my shoulder really easy. Not in the sense that I let it weigh me down, but I get louder if I feel like I'm not being. I shouldn't say respected, because that sounds like, I don't know. It sounds a little too tough guy from what I'm trying to go towards. But it's like when people are dismissive to your work, it's their business. It's their business, and at the end of the day, I know that. But I do like to send reminders that I'm not doing this for anybody else. Because if that was the case, I would just find a job that paid more and more and more and more and more and more, and then maybe one that would let me write. But
Well,
no, it's like
I,
you
f- I
do
feel
what you
like
do.
I feel like what I'm hearing from what you're saying is, if somebody tries to discourage me from using my voice, not only am I not backing down, but I'm gonna say it a little bit louder. Like, and
Exactly.
and I'm
Yeah.
also I'm not gonna diminish my voice because of somebody else's discouragement. I'm
Right.
going to make sure it's heard.
Yeah. It's all kind
Just
of
in your
insecurity in a
own
way.
way, of course,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, it's like it's all insecurity. It's insecurity that we react to it, but it's also insecurity that somebody would say it, right? So at that point, I need to speak louder so that I can hear myself, not affected by somebody else's opinion of something that they're not doing. Not that they can't do it, but they can't. I'm not a skin suit. I'm a whole person. So it's
Mm.
like they can't do what I'm doing, and I don't really want to do what anybody else is doing. So like watch me do this even more.
So I think kind of the lesson, kind of what is in the inside of what you're saying, and what I totally agree with, is like knowing your voice, knowing who you are, knowing what you want to say and what you stand for. It has value. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
absolutely.
like it's important, and it's unless it's harmful, abusive, horrible, but if it's like, if it's really coming from your heart, from your soul, it has value, and not not letting somebody stop you from saying exactly what is on your heart to say. That's big. That's a big deal.
If Michael Jordan didn't have a chip on his shoulder, we wouldn't have been able to witness what the pinnacle of somebody at their sport and their maximum ability looked like.
Yeah.
That was a constant proving wrong.
Yeah.
And I love it because, not to jump on my soapbox, but I gotta say, I don't have my mom, I don't have 3 living siblings, I don't have countless friends because of a decision that I made for my family. And so if that doesn't stop me, like what is somebody's opinion of me, especially when it comes to comic books, really going to do other than, and again, I'm not trying to be Thanos, but like, what is it really going to do other than like get on my nerves? Like, there's really no purpose. Nothing's going to stop me at this point except for me. So if you would like to step on the pavement, like I'm the steamroller is still going. So you can be a part of history too.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like Thanos, that the reason why you can say that, like, is because Thanos was well written,
Yeah.
And this wasn't like, this was somebody writing like a villain the way a villain should be written, which is, hey, in my mind, I'm not a bad guy. I'm doing what I think is right.
Yeah.
Even though it's twisted, but in my mind, it's same thing with Magneto. Like, this is
I
a
can do
solution
this,
to the
or it can get
problem,
really,
and I
really
think
bad.
this solution is better than your solution.
Right.
But we all kind of can see on a human level that it's probably kind of twisted. But at the same time, you can empathize with it too,
Yep.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't know. And there needs to be a Magneto to challenge, a Professor X, because Professor X wasn't right all the time either.
You have to get you can't get better unless you meet good or better. You know what I mean? Like I have to have something to compete against, even if it's like just me. But you can't get better until you hit a wall. Then you have to get over the wall.
Totally.
Man, thanks for having me on, Marshall. This is fun.
It's been fun for sure, man. We always have good conversations.
Yep.
Well, once again, everybody, don't forget, please check out the link in the description. There's one link to rule them all. Mini comic bundles .com. Go check it out. This is where you'll see, what Jason's
we're on month 8, guys. Like there's four left. So get them. They are limited, and they're just good. They're just good comics. So go get them.
Mini comics is where it's at, and very, these guys are doing the top notch, version of what mini comics can be. So definitely, I would say check them out. And that being said, thank you, everybody. We got a lot of old friends here, a lot of people who've been hanging around for a long time.
Yeah, this was fun.
You guys are awesome. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thanks for all the questions and everything. And we'll be back again doing something, one of us, me and somebody, and I'm sure Jason will be back too, because
I'm always around.
He's always hanging out. So. And you can always check him and Crimson Owl Comics, who's also in the chat, Ronnie.
Yep.
On their show. What channel is that?
That's on Crimson Owl. That's on Ronnie's channel. It's on Crimson Owl Comics de la Muerte, every Thursday night. We always, we usually pick a comic to review, or we just talk about some aspect of the horror genre. You know, whether it's from a creative standpoint, we've done movies, like, you know, just come and check us out. We just like
Awesome.
chatting about scary stuff.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, thank you once again, Jason, for coming on, and everybody for hanging out. And we'll see you next time.
Y'all take care. Be good. Thanks again, Marshall.
Yeah.